if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because it's just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people, if people start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning and welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam as we continue our quest to revisit WandaVision, episode 5, where we now deal with the ramifications of really nothing. And I think that, I made a mistake last night. Let me start out there. I decided that I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to watch as much of this show as I can in one sitting, and then I'll just bang out all the recordings at once. And part of the problem with that idea was it's easy to differentiate what's happening at one point within the hex. It's easy to differentiate what Wanda's doing and what's going on. Because, episode 5 is the 80s, episode 6 is the 90s, episode 7 is the 2000s, then episode 8, which is what I got through episode 8, is the flashback episode. It's easy to keep track of what's what there, because it's the 80s, they're little kids, and they grow up to become, 10 years old, because of the, because of the puppy. Then the next episode is the Halloween episode. Then the next episode is the, is the one with, what's it called? The one that's Modern Family, which I think that's hands on the best one they handle, but we'll talk about that in a few weeks. And then we get to the flashback episode where we explain everything that's happened up until this point. Now, look, I'm not saying, how do I put this delicately? I'm not saying that the show was handled poorly, but rewatching this show now, it's something I have not done since seeing Multiverse of Madness. Rewatching this show now, I think that the mistaken handoff between WandaVision and Multiverse of Madness is not in Multiverse of Madness. The mistake in the handoff is in WandaVision. Where I think that, like I've said in the weeks leading up to this, this show is very clearly trying to drum up conversation. It's it's written and structured in a way that's designed to get you to speculate. It's kind of in a weird way like Lost. If you watched Lost as it was on, that was a show that was designed J.J. Abrams used the mystery box, where the mystery box is this idea where you have this, you have this object at the center, we don't know what it is, and the entire show about solving what the mystery box is. And then Lost was just mystery box inside mystery box inside mystery box, where as you got things explained, not much really made more sense as you went along. And that was, kind of the issue there. This is kind of the same thing, where it's but the difference is, Lost never told you from the beginning what was happening, because they're very upfront with no, this is Wanda. Wanda has taken over this town. And in this episode, it is kind of a thing where it's it's written in such a way where it could be not Wanda, but it's very clearly Wanda. The moment where he talks to Norm, and it's the 80s, and they're in this, they're in the business where they're working, and I apologize, that was my speaker turning off. And they're in this, they're in the building, and he's talking about email, and then the message is coming through, and when he breaks Norm out of the what's it called? When he breaks Norm out of the spell Wanda has him under, and he's like, "Oh my God, where are my kids? She's in my brain." Like, it's a great horror moment, and they play into the horror tropes, and I think they do that very, very well. The issue is, it's written in a way where it's like, is it meant to be her? Because keeping in mind, like, I don't remember if it was announced that Kathryn Hahn was playing Agatha Harkness. We don't get the Agatha reveal until the next episode. But, oh no, it's not even the next episode. I think it is the episode after. Because I think we get through the 90s episode into the, into the 2000s. And that's when we get the reveal. Yes, because it's after, because we find out she's the one interviewing. I think that's just kind of like an issue that this show kind of has, where we're so focused on this idea of who's the bad guy, who's to blame for this, is it Wanda, is it not Wanda, that the show leans into that by saying, like, well, obviously Agnes is up to something, Agnes has something going on here, but what is it? And it's this weird, it's a really weird thing that really could have been handled better. And we'll get to it, because I have a rewrite of the show, and I hate being the person to do this, but I think that, like, with this, benefit of hindsight, looking back 3 years ago to this show, let's take a minute, let's take a breath, and look back at what it was that really that would have fixed the show a little bit. And I think that would be an interesting thing to do. We'll be addressing that after the episode with the flashback, because I think that that's kind of the beginning of the end of this, and where the issue kind of comes in when it comes to, the issue at hand with Wanda and Agatha, and that's kind of where we are here. What else was in this episode? But, like, again, the issue is I can't remember specifically what happened in one episode with what's happening outside the hex, because it's, oh no, this episode is the one with the drone, because she warns them in this episode. The drone is this episode. The 90s is the one with Halloween. So this is the episode with the drone. And they go, the drone comes in, takes a shot at Wanda, and she comes out and she's like, "You're going to leave me alone in this town." And again, very unambiguous about what's going on here. Very unambiguous that she's the one in control and she's the one who's got this town held hostage. But it's designed in a way where it's meant to keep people talking about it, so it's kind of a little bit meant to be like, oh, we don't know yet. It's weird. It's such a weird way of handling it, where, like it's almost as if they're trying to play, like, is someone else pulling the strings here? Especially when you can take into consideration the earlier in the season, conversation that happened or the message that came through from Jimmy Woo. It was like, Wanda, who's doing this to you? And then when we get to the outside, everyone's like, well, it's, like the guy who's Hayward's like, well, it's Wanda. Wanda's the one who we've now moved the way we are considering this operation from Wanda being a victim to Wanda being the threat. And it's like, he's not wrong. He's not wrong in that regard. He's like, Wanda's the one who's taken over the town. It's just everything around it is handled so weirdly that it's like, oh, she's the victim. And in a way, like, look, we'll get to it when we get to the 8th episode, where we get through all of Wanda's trauma. But, like, yeah, she is outlandish. She's lashing out because she's gone through all this trauma. But that still doesn't excuse what happened. In a way, watching this show and then going to Multiverse of Madness makes me think that, like, oh, this is closer to the Wanda we had in Multiverse of Madness than the Wanda we think about, considering it's been 2 years in between them. It's an interesting situation with this complete reversal now that the movie's been out. And then the other thing is the arrival of Pietro. I think the new Pietro, like that being Evan Peters, again, we're playing with the multiverse here. We know we're playing with the multiverse. We know this is leading to a movie called Multiverse of Madness. Like, at the time, when the show was announced, at, 5 years ago, like this weekend, or 5 years ago, like last weekend, when it was announced at San Diego Comic-Con, it was It was with the intent that this movie will be led into directly by WandaVision. And the movie's called Multiverse of Madness, and it was in the aftermath of the Fox acquisition. So bringing him into play Quicksilver was like, oh shit, they're bringing in, this is the first X-Men character that we had. And then it's like, look, I see what you're doing. And again, it's leading into that same thing. We are just going to start conversation for the sake of starting conversation. We're not going to think about what the implication of this is or anything like that. We're just going to, this is what's best to keep people talking about this week to week, which I think is not a great way to run a show. And we'll talk more about Evan Peters when we get to the next episode, because I think there is some depth to what they bring him in for, if not the stunt casting. And I think that the stunt casting is what kind of casts a weird light on it. But we'll talk about that next week when we talk about his interactions with Wanda in the Halloween episode. And I think the ending of this is probably my favorite ending of a episode of this show, where its Vision is starting to wake up and realize, like, Wanda is doing something here, and it's not good. So, like, that moment where the two of them confront each other, like, in the living room, is fantastic. And it's very well done. It's just in the next episode we get more of that, and I think that's kind of what this show needed to be. I think it needed to be about 1 or 2 episodes shorter. Because I think the other thing is, like, when we get to, like, there's really a negligible difference in, like, I don't think there's enough in a lot of these episodes to really warrant them being there. There's really a negligible difference when it comes to, like, the stylistic differences between these shows, because especially when you get, like, the only difference is briefly there's a narration in the beginning of the 90s one, and you get different sound effects, but, like, there's, like, they could have done the age up and then cut over to the 90s and then had that be both in one episode. That would have been interesting. But no, they each get their own episode. But we'll wrap up there, and we'll move on to the Halloween episode next week. Until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.